Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Wednesday, May 22nd, 2024. I am Dave Biddle. I'll be joined by Mr. Matt Baxendell in just a moment. Bax and I have a lot to get into. We're going to talk about this Jaden Rashida lawsuit. I'm sure you guys have seen this. It dropped yesterday. He is suing Florida, including head coach Billy Napier, a former staffer, and a former collective, a collective that's now defunct, for $10 million. Now, is this a one-off, or are we going to start seeing a lot of this stuff where kids are promised certain things in NIL and then it doesn't get delivered? I mean, Rashida sounds like he had a contract signed. Rusty Hardin, the famous Rusty Hardin, who I first heard of when he was representing Roger Clemens back in the misremembering days. That's his lawyer, Zeke's lawyer. I mean, Rusty Hardin has represented several prominent athletes. So we're going to get into that. We're going to talk plenty of Ohio State stuff too. Recruiting. And I want to get Bax's thoughts on the O-line. I did a deep dive on the O-line on our site yesterday, a written deep dive. We've done a deep dive on the show. I'm curious to get Bax's thoughts on the O-line. And before we do that, I want to let you guys know about Manscaped. Fellas, blink if you haven't purchased a Father's Day gift yet. Yeah, we thought so. Today's episode is brought to you by Manscaped, the leaders in below-the-waist grooming, beard trimming, and more. You know that beard trimmer that your dad's been using since you were in grade school? Yeah, it probably needs upgrading. Introducing the Beard Hedger Pro Kit. This complete beard maintenance kit for all the bearded kings. This all-in-one kit comes with a beard hedger, Manscaped's most advanced beard trimmer, as well as shampoo, conditioner, oil, and balm for his beard. It also comes with a brush, comb, and scissors so he can style his beard and mustache like the true gentleman he is. No beard kit would be complete without Manscaped's handyman face shaver. It's true. For that smooth finish we know he loves, this bad boy is all he needs. Compact enough to fit in any travel case. Make sure he takes this on his next trip. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code Bucknuts at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use code Bucknuts. Never forget where you came from, if you know what I mean. Happy Father's Day from Manscaped. There we go. All right. Let's bring in another father, Mr. Matt Baxendell. Good to see you this morning, my friend.
Good morning, Mr. Biddle. How are we doing this fine day?
Doing great. I mean,
I just want to say that you promised me $13 million to come on this podcast that you're paying me afterwards, right?
I think that was Brian Schottenstein.
Okay, I'm going to go talk to him.
That's Brian Schottenstein. He's the money man. Maybe I make promises and he has to then foot the bill. But yeah, I think that was B-Shot. But moving right along. So I was waiting to see what would happen with this Jaden Rashida stuff. Because it broke and it was wait a minute, he wasn't just promised a low number like $1 million. We were told he was promised $10 million or $13 million, as it turns out. And I was curious, is he going to end up suing people over this, or is this just going to go away? Because nothing happened for a year. Oh boy, it's not going away. He hired Rusty Hart, a lawyer of the sports stars, and he is suing Florida, Billy Napier, the former collective, a former staff member, for $13 million. I mean, do you think this is the start of a trend, or do you think this is a one-off?
So I think the timing is fascinating because we heard about this back when he was a recruit, because remember, Miami had a big deal with him, and then he got a, quote, bigger deal, and then he got out of his commitment with Florida because they didn't give him a cent. And I remember we were all thinking, well, did Miami pay him $5 million and Florida offered him $8 million? What's going on here? Turns out, if you read the information, the only money that changed hands was the Florida boosters paying the Miami boosters for the down payment that they paid them originally, which was $100,000 or something. So it's absolute wild. But looking into the lawsuit, the thing that caught my eye, and I'm not a lawyer, mind you, but there's no breach of contract aspect of it, which means they probably signed a deal that either party could get out of, which makes life very fascinating to me. Because it's essentially saying that the moment that he was at Arizona State, which is where he ended up originally after Florida, nothing happened. But now that he's at Georgia, a.k.a. Florida's arch rivals, wow, let's throw this big old lawsuit out there in an attempt to bomb Florida's season. And let's face it, Billy Napier has been terrible I continue to be amazed that they fired Dan Mullen, who was the most decent coach they've hired since Urban left. Dan Mullen went like 11-3 and 11-2 and 10-3 or whatever in a couple of his seasons. Napier doesn't even have a winning year. This is entirely connected to the time frame of him ending up at Georgia, in my humble opinion, and it's absolutely wonderful to watch. It's another rivalry move, so I think that part of it's hilarious.
I mean, the cocktail party is going to be even better than usual this year. I know Rashida's not going to be playing, unless Carson Beck gets hurt or something. But still, as you mentioned, not only did he – he's now committed to 4 different schools, including Miami, and now he's at Georgia, Florida's arch rival, and he's suing Florida for $13 million. I mean, you can't write the script any better than this. It's beautiful.
No, you can't. And there's other stuff about this whole thing that makes me really fascinated, though. If you're a Texas A&M coach or booster, like, you've got to be wetting your pants right now, man, because the stuff that seems like it's going on in Aggie land, where they had half their recruiting class leave after 1 year, and a bunch of them said something to the effect of, Aggie isn't paying us jack what they promised. They had the one kid go in the portal and then have to go back because his NIL contract says that he owes the Aggies all his NIL money anywhere else he goes. I mean, that was unbelievable when I saw that in the news. This is the first of many lawsuits that I think are going to come out of the Wild West period of NIL that we've seen happen the last couple of years. At the end of the day, Dave, until we get some sort of guideposts on this NIL stuff, this is going to happen. And I honestly hope Jaden Rashida wins. I hope he does. I hope he has that Hugh Hathcock guy over a barrel who was the one who's promising him payments through his company and all this other stuff. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens, because if this lawsuit goes positively at all, I mean, even if Rashada gets awarded $2 million, every Aggie kid is going to be suing A&M immediately. And how many other kids are going to feel like they didn't get, quote, theirs at other schools? This is a very big Pandora's box that I'm fascinated to see where it goes.
No, I got to address this. We got, I don't think we're related, which is crazy because I don't think there's too many Biddles out there. Eric Biddle saying, no Biddle is worth $13 million unless you're a Pennsylvania Biddle. LOL. Well, as it turns out, my entire family is originally from Altoona, Pennsylvania. My sister and I were both born in Ohio. My dad's was an Air Force guy, so we were born in Ohio, thankfully. But my entire family, my mom and dad, both sets of grandparents, aunts and uncles, all from Altoona, Pennsylvania. Something about Biddles in Pennsylvania. So there you go, Eric. I'm an original, I guess, kind of Pennsylvania. No, I'm not.
So you're saying you're a secret heir to the Sheets fortune?
No, I'm definitely a Buckeye, 100%. I'm just saying, like,
there's nothing wrong with being Pennsylvania born and ending up in Ohio, Dave. There's nothing wrong with that at all.
I know. Yeah, you would know something about that, wouldn't you?
I was born in Pittsburgh.
I know. That's why you're still a Pittsburgh pro sports fan and a low-key closet Penn State fan.
No Penn State. Both my parents went to Pitt.
Both my parents
went to Pitt.
I'm kidding.
Nothing for Penn State.
We got a Michigan fan in here. Ferris Bueller's day off, apparently. Ferris Bueller, let me tell you something, buddy. It's going to be a bad year for you.
Very bad.
You get to come here November 30th. Ferris Bueller, glad you're taking the day off. You might want to take the year off, Ferris.
Take off. That's what everybody related to Michigan did as soon as they got done with their whole things together for the national title chase.
Oh, we're having a little fun. We're having a little fun with our Michigan fan, Ferris Bueller here.
We're gonna have a lot of fun with them the rest of the year.
Ferris Bueller is just that's above his pay grade. Ferris Bueller, just one of the many great movies out there. All right, let's see. Where do you want to go next? Actually, let me ask you this. You mentioned guardrails. Like, what can be done? Now, it sounds like I have mentioned this because we know, like, if they try to take, if the NCAA tries to. If the NCAA gets taken to court, they're going to lose with stuff like this. We know that because of the Supreme Court case. Mm-hmm. But now it feels like, Bax, when you have a lot of powerful people that want the exact same thing, that thing usually happens. And it sounds like you have a lot of powerful people that want the exact same thing. So do you think guardrails will be put in place? And what might those entail? I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but,
no,
here a little bit.
Well, no, the reality here, Dave, is you hit the nail on the head. See, in our free capitalist system here in the United States of America, which has created the greatest prosperity in the history of humanity through the free market, it's literally illegal to deny people the opportunity to earn money in legal fashion, which is what these kids are now allowed to do, is earn money in these legal fashions. But what you can do is you can set it up where you have either a collectively bargained system where the players as a group agree to guidelines. You see this in all levels of sports. For example, the NBA, the NHL, the NFL, they have salary caps where these players earn this money, but it's part of a system where you can't have more or less than a net set of revenues that goes to a group. That's one way. When they're talking right now about how the NCAA is going to have to potentially start using some of the television money to compensate their players, that's going to be collectively bargained agreement. What happens if the NIL guidelines go into that saying, hey, you cannot sign for more than $50,000 if you're a recruit going to college. And I'm just throwing round numbers out here, guys. You can't sign for more than $50,000 as an NIL recruit. And you have to have an NIL verification officer on staff who ensures that you're actually doing something for name, image, and likeness, and that it's not true pay to play, which is what a lot of schools are doing right now. Texas A&M's paying every offensive lineman $50K a year to be a lineman. They're not actually doing ads. They're not actually doing NIL. They're not like that guy from Nebraska who's like, his name was like Freezy Jones or something goofy. And he was like the same name as the company, right? And he did like a TV ad, right? You have to have some sort of actual advertising work to be able to use your name, image, and likeness. I think that's part of a collective bargain agreement. That's a total possibility. And so there's nothing illegal about that. That fits inside our American capitalist system very well. So to me, that's the real solution, is something to that effect. And I think in the interim, what you're going to also see is you're going to have certain other conferences that have rules on things. And I think that you're going to end up seeing that there's going to be some sort of legislation that comes through on these NIL collectives, because let's face it, our government can't agree on a lot. But whenever it comes to things like football games or building stadiums, all these places seem to find the money suddenly. So I think at the end of the day, that's where the ultimate guidelines are going to come from, is part of some collective bargaining system that I think we're moving towards here. Even if we classify these players not as employees, but still as students, there's going to be a collectively bargained trust of some sort, to me. That is going to be where the players have sort of their kitty. It's the equivalent of a college football player union. And that's going to help dictate what your maximum minimums are. And so maybe everybody minimum when they come in has a NIL of between $25,000 and $50,000. I'm just throwing round numbers out. And if you are CJ Stroud and you're a Heisman candidate, then your NIL opportunities can expand, but you have to prove that you are appearing. Like I said, an NIL compliance officer, I think, will be the new Doug Archie position going forward.
Very well said. I could talk about this for forever. Let's move on to some Ohio State-centric topics. I'm so curious to see how this lawsuit turns out. All right, recruiting. We've talked a lot about Trey McNutt, Naheem Offord, French, Moore, Dorian Brew. And it seems like some of these guys, it's not trending exactly favorably for Ohio State. I don't know. I like that the dean said yesterday on the Morning Five that if he had to pick right now, he thinks Trey McNutt's going to be a Buckeye. But man, hopefully he's just having, reminds me a little bit of Aaron Scott, where it's like, kind of hear things you don't like, at this time last year, but then he ended up being a Buckeye in the end, like we predicted. I kind of feel the same way about Trey McNutt. Where are you at with him? Naheem Offord, are you worried about him, in liking the Oregon visit a little too much? Where are you at on Dorian Brew and also the wide receivers, Moore and French?
At the end of the day, folks, it's still May, right? Like, kids can't sign till December. I think, first of all, everybody needs to take a deep breath. A guy named McNutt not being a Buckeye is still outside of my realm of comprehension.
Yeah, we started a Heisman campaign for his father.
I will tell you right now, I have been looking, and I must have somehow lost it over the years, but I had a McNutt for Heisman shirt.
McNutt for Heisman. I mean,
I absolutely had a McNutt for Heisman shirt.
We can do it again, but not if you
and that's the other thing. We're worried about where Trey McNutt's going to end up, but his dad's a beloved former Buckeye. I mean, come on. That's one of those that classifies under, I'll have to see it to believe it. It was like when Will Johnson was being committed, it was like everybody was looking at Ohio State like, you're going to get him, you're going to get him, you're going to get him. And I'm like, there's a lot of family history to overcome there. right? And it didn't. It's just there's certain levels of gravity that you just can't escape. So McNutt is of this group that's trending the least of my concerns right now. I think Naeem Offord, look, kids make visits, right? Kids, they make visits. But at the end of the day, what Tim Walton's building, I think, has a lot of pull, if you will. I think the one thing that it's going to be interesting to see here is some of these other schools that are, quote, lesser than OSU that can offer more immediate, obvious playing time. But I don't know if Oregon's even that school. So that's something to be considered as well. And this is a conversation, Dave, that I had in the bucket this past week, and I'd love to get your thought process on it. Once you get past a certain caliber of guy, with the way the transfer portal is today, where you can go anywhere you want, it almost feels like some kids are going to see themselves better served as having an apprenticeship of sorts, if you will, somewhere they get immediately on the field as a freshman with the direction, spoken intention of transferring somewhere better as a sophomore. I was talking about Blake Woodby in this instance of, he was the third corner in the class at OSU. He's top 100 corner though. And he's coming in on the heels of a really strong corner class at Ohio State too, where it looks like there's a ton of studs ahead of him. If you're Blake Woodby and you want to play at Ohio State, is it smarter to say, well, I'm going to go play at Maryland for 2 years and then walk in as an all Big Ten level kind of guy because I'm getting run? I mean, that's a real possibility that kids will go to secondary schools with the specific intention, right, of I'm not staying here for 4 years, guys. I'm going to come here to get on the field. And you guys are having me here only because I'm getting on the field. That's what I find very interesting here with the whole portal. Some kids are going to start really thinking that way of, I'm not going to school and I'm going to get my tattoo and I'm going to stay here forever and go Hoosiers, right? They're going to pick a school like that where they say, yeah, I'm like the 20th rated corner in the class and I can sit for 2 years or I can play and then get in the portal and go, yeah, you guys wanted me then and here I am now. Experienced. I could see that happening. Now, for a guy like Offord, he might be a little too high rated in my mind to think that he's going to think he won't play right away anywhere, but it just depends on the individual kid's personality.
And I trust Tim Walton so much. I know. I mean, I'd be surprised if Offord went to Oregon and didn't have a good time.
I'd go to Oregon and have a good time.
Yeah, I mean, Dave, I'd be surprised if he didn't. Like, I still think he's going to be a Buckeye in the end.
Remember Terrell Pryor's Michigan visit? Everybody's like, he had too much fun. Oh, and then guess what happened? He showed up at Ohio State and was here. Like, every one of these kids is going to have food that's amazing. People telling them how amazing they are. Pretty girls smiling and winking at them the whole time. Parties available to them if that's what they want. They want to go jet skiing, they'll go jet skiing. They're going to make it out like it's the time of their lives on every one of these visits, right? And Oregon does that super well, right? At the end of the day, Oregon is a school that's going to always be a challenge to Ohio State in terms of some of this stuff. Now, long term, Oregon doesn't have a local recruiting base, so they have to sell flash and pizzazz. But the end, they're a school that, hey, we're in a conference now with multiple teams that can actually recruit. If USC has its crap together, they'll be able to recruit. Oregon's a recruiting power. And then, of course, you have Ohio State, Penn State. Michigan never really has recruited superbly, but they still recruit like top 15 level. So you've got 5 schools just right there that are going to be perpetual top 20-ish recruiting teams and have the potential in any given year to be a top 5 school if you have the right coach in place. So that's just the way it is. But yeah, I think you have to believe what Ohio State's doing is pretty darn good. And I don't necessarily think that you have to necessarily think that if somebody visits somewhere else that we're going to magically lose them. It's not like Clemson where we're going to pull their scholarship.
I know Dabo has some interesting tactics that he's using down there, like pulling scholarships, basically ignoring the transfer portal, which you cannot do in this day and age in college football. You can't ignore. I think they brought in like 3 guys, something like that, and none of them are. I don't think are. I'd have to go back and look. Maybe one of them's, like a good player. I don't think they brought in anybody of note, and you cannot do that in this day and age. Clemson went from, perennial top 3 program to back to Clemson, basically.
There's a whole conversation as to why they were what they were that we could have as a totally different time frame, though. When you play by one set of rules and a lot of other people don't, and then now all of a sudden that's turned, where you're just choosing not to play by the rules everyone else is playing by in the opposite fashion, funneling money through Dabo's religious institutions to get kids to campus isn't enough to get the talent to Clemson like it was for a long time.
We're going to finish talking about the offensive line. Don't go anywhere. Want to let you guys know about a great deal you can get from one of my favorite companies. You guys know I love Omaha Steaks. With Father's Day right around the corner, what do you give the man who has everything? Easy. You give him an experience he'll never forget. You give him Omaha Steaks, because a world-class dad deserves a world-class steak. The Father's Day experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to put a smile on the big guy's face this summer with hand-selected gift packages starting at just $89. Go to omahasteaks.com. Use promo code Bucknuts at checkout for an additional discount when you shop gourmet gift packages for Father's Day. They have the best steaks, chicken, pork chops, burgers, and more. I also love their seasoning, which is basically garlic, paprika, and onion. Everything is very easy, and your dad will love it. Hop on omahasteaks.com, pick out some stuff you know he'll love, and it'll be delivered right to his doorstep. From dad jokes to skinned knees, your dad is one of a kind. This Father's Day, show him the love with Omaha Steaks. Go to omahasteaks.com and use promo code Bucknuts at checkout for exclusive savings on gift packages starting at just $89. He's guaranteed to love it. I think one of your kids should send you some Omaha Steaks backs, but not let that. Don't tell you. Just use code Bucknuts, and all of a sudden you'll be who's at my door? Is this somebody selling? No, it'll be Omaha Steaks, like a big old thing of steaks. I mean, that would put a smile on Bax's face. All right, hopefully
I like meat.
I love meat too. I'm gonna have a super grill out on Memorial Day. I'm gonna stock up. Speaking of steaks, okay, so offensive line. I did a deep dive on the site yesterday, analyzing the offensive line. It's interesting. It's definitely Buckeye fans don't agree on everything, shockingly, but pretty much every Buckeye fan's like, yeah, that's the one concern I have on this year's team. Now, when I break it down, though, this is a veteran offensive line. When you look at the starters, you're talking no first-year starters on the projected starting offensive line. Last year they had three first-year starters last year. Yeah, I think they had three first-year starters last year. 0 this year. And Simmons will be a third-year starter, including his year at San Diego State. Josh Simmons, 3-year starter. Donovan Jackson's going to be a 3-year starter. Seth McLaughlin, he'll be a 3rd-year starter. Carson Hinsman, 2nd-year starter. Josh Fryer, 2nd-year starter. Now, Hinsman, granted, first year at right guard, but still. And then the depth, you got Luke Montgomery, presuming he doesn't win the starting right guard job. It looks like Hinsman's going to. You got Tegra Shabola. You got Austin Seiverveld. Seiverveld.
We're gonna have to ask him how to say it.
I think it's Seiverveld. At left guard, who I continue to hear good things about, and then George Fitzpatrick at left tackle. I do wonder if something happened at left tackle with Simmons, if they would move things around, or if they would have Fitzpatrick go in the game. Hinsman's the de facto backup center, because if something happens to McLaughlin, they'll move Hinsman over to center and put probably Montgomery in at right guard or Tegra. Anyway, I said too much there. Your thoughts on the offensive line, the starters, the depth, Justin Fry, Chip Kelly. Go.
Well, I think this is all relative, first of all. I think our offensive line has a lot of guys that are good, right? But by Ohio State standards is good enough, right? I think we have guys that could start at other Big Ten teams, absolutely. But is that the standard? And I think where we kind of hold back a little bit right now on the offensive line is look at all the other position groups on the team. D-line, wide receiver, running back, defensive backfield, even the young guys at linebacker. It looks like there's a lot of future first-round level guys. And I think you look at our offensive line, and do any of these guys look like they're going to be a first-round pick in the NFL draft? Not really right now. And I think that's perceived lower ceiling of the offensive line compared to the rest of the team, I think has a lot of people like, well, are we okay there? I don't know. How is it? Oh, you're right. It's a veteran line. It's a line that, wasn't elite last year, but wasn't horrible. And you have to assume that they would be getting better. I think the other side of this too is that, there's a lot of guys that were highly rated recruits that are sitting in the backups. I mean, let's be real here. Tegra was a top 50 player and we keep waiting for him to kind of find his way into it. Luke Montgomery was a highly rated guy who a lot of the spring we thought was going to ultimately start and still might. I think that Tegra probably comes in as the left tackle if there is an injury to Simmons. But you're right. It's a veteran line. It's a good line. It's a solid line. It's a good enough line to beat most teams you play with and not really worry too much about it. But I think the difference that we're going to be looking at is this line good enough against Oregon? Is this line good enough against Michigan? Is this line good enough against Georgia? That's what everybody's kind of wondering. And I will say this too. Remember when we won the national championship in 2014? The line was a spot that people thought was good, not elite, and it turned out to be better than we realized. So, that was a different story then too. So, proof will be in the pudding this year. I definitely think it's the spot of greatest concern to me still, but I also look at it as it is a relative concern. It's still one of the 3 best lines in the Big Ten, Dave? Somewhere in that range. I mean, I would probably put Oregon's offensive line a little ahead right now. And then after that, Michigan lost their whole line.
Their entire line. Right.
Yeah, and I don't know if that program's ethos is going to be remotely the same without Harbaugh there as the driving force behind it, not to mention when NCAA sanctions arrive and they get turned into a burning, flaming heap of disaster. But realistically speaking, Ohio State has in the Big Ten a top couple line. I mean, that's just what it is. And, a lot of folks have been commenting on here saying, well, they weren't that bad last year. You're right. We were also a little skewed here by a couple things. One being that the Missouri game was an abject disaster. And that was just one of the worst decisions on how to handle an offensive lineman or offensive line in general. So that was a bad thing. 2, if that McCord pass doesn't get tipped and gets, completed, then who says we don't score? And 3, there was a lot of times this year where McCord had plenty of time and couldn't find an open receiver. Ryan Day said that repeatedly. I keep coming back to that Penn State halftime interview where Day's like, they're wide open. You just got to find them. So the line was doing its job. And I keep bringing that up, Dave, because I've never heard a coach go, yeah, we're playing great and our quarterback sucks. So how much of the O-line play, when you look at it, is directly related to the fact that the quarterback behind him was mediocre? And what happens if they have a better QB behind him? Like, would we be talking about this line, how great they are and amazing they are if they had Justin Fields or CJ Stroud behind them? Maybe. So I think this is, like I said, it's a relative concern. I don't think they flat out suck. I just think that they are not as high of a ceiling as the other position groups at Ohio State. And they have a little bit more to prove than most of the position groups at Ohio State.
Had a Maserati at wide receiver and a Honda at quarterback. I kind of feel bad. Honda Accord, McCord. It's just funny. I know Zach Smith came up with that. It's funny. It's funny. And Chris Drew, but it's funny. But I wish it was like Ford McCord, because Hondas are actually pretty nice. They're not Maseratis, but Anyway.
He's more like a Dodge Stratus. He was big time stuffing.
Oh my God. All right. Great stuff out of Matt Baxendell as usual. Catch his column every Sunday. It is must read material. It is the bucket. Thanks to Bax. Thanks to all of you. We appreciate it very much. Hope everyone has a great rest of your day.